All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Azul video. Um, in this video, I am mostly just going to talk, and the topic of the video is why Azul is hard, why Azul is hard to teach, and why thus must experiment in your gameplay. And to start things off, I wanted to compare some of what I said in the beginner to master series to how I play now. And one of the things that I recall bringing up was that with all other things equal, like I preferred to have the first player tile. And I don't know that I knew my exact stat at that point, like number of first times I take the first player tile. But now my stat for that is at 2.08, which I assure you is much lower than it was at that time. So I'm more or less trying to not take it when possible. And I would venture a guess that at that point, my points gained with complete columns was above 7. So averaging slightly more than 1 column per game. Now I'm averaging slightly less than 1 column per game. And none of this is to say that I'm a better player because of it, though I do think that is the case. But just that there is room to experiment with different strategies. Obviously, at the end of the beginner to master series, I had reached 800 ELO. At this point in time, I'm at 816. So, I was able to reach 800 at that point, and I'm able to reach 800 now, playing with basically different approaches. So, to further illustrate this point, I took a subset of the stats that you saw on that page for all of the current top 10 players. And then for each row has this conditional formatting based on the high and low values. And some things like kind of instantly stand out, like Saprolot and Zeus are almost the lowest across the board in every category. And then like Queen Dong, aka CN Azul, ABCDEFGH, Backle Bogart, Blaze are almost like completely green. Hey 123 completely green. And like the scale's different, and this isn't a perfect data visualization, but you can see like we have Saprolot and Zeus around 2 number of rounds as first player, whereas CN Azul 2.55, ABC 2.86, Backle Bogart's all the way up at 3. And similarly, like there's pretty big variation in points from columns. CN Azul is almost up at 8. She's also the highest in points from complete color. And then similarly, like points lost with the floor line. So like, how does each person avoid negatives? Zeus is way down at 11. Blaze is up at 15. So the point isn't to scrutinize this data, but just to show you that even amongst the top 10 best players in the world right now, there is a lot of variation. And so even with people like myself releasing videos telling you, what works and what doesn't work, there is also room to just explore what works for you. The same strategies that work for me might not work for someone else. The same strategies that work for Saprolot might not work for CN Azul. So and we can see that there's clear preferences in playstyle where some people, like to take the first player tile and control the board. Other people prefer that their opponent takes that negative point, and they work around having control of the board. So that's one point I wanted to make, which is that you should explore different play styles, especially if you feel stuck at your current ELO. It is worth experimenting, even if it means you will take a temporary drop in ELO. I have taken massive drops in ELO, sometimes due to just bad play or, a string of bad luck, but sometimes it's due to experimenting with new things. And it takes a while to build up the strategies with the new things that you're experimenting with. The other reason, or getting to a slightly different topic, but the reason Azul is hard, the reason Azul is hard to teach, the reason Azul is hard to learn is because it is very hard to quantify trade-offs in the middle of a game, even conceptually outside of a game. And I have some examples here, and I'm going to be using the new Azul sandbox that Code Ninja created. I actually want to start with a different example here. So this lets you put tiles around, set up different scenarios, yada, yada, yada. This is from the browser extension, and I'll show you how to get to this if you don't know how. But you can go to any game that you've completed or in the middle of and open the sandbox, and then you can create whatever scenarios you want. So on the surface, like, Azul is very simple. We know how we score points. We know that we need the most points to win. But unless you're in round 5, there are always future considerations. And it's very difficult to quantify the trade-offs in certain situations. So the scenario I have here, I'm going to say that it's my turn. This is round 1. And I have to play this black tile. And I think pretty much everyone would play this black tile on row 1. That's easy. But if I make this 5 black tiles, things change. And in this scenario, probably you would choose to play them on row 5 and give up row 1. And that one's less easy, but still, you still might have to think about it. And let's say you go back to 2, you're probably still playing them on row 1. But what happens if you go to 3 or 4 black tiles? Then things get a little bit murkier. And I don't think anyone could confidently tell you that, like, playing these 3 black tiles on row 1 is gonna result on average in 6 more points per game than if you were to play them on row 5. But you're trading off, like, for one, you're getting a point scored on row 1, but then you're taking negatives. You are enabling future scoring and good adjacency in your top rows, but delaying your bottom row development. So there's all of these trade-offs. And in this example, I'm only considering my own board. I'm not even thinking about what's going on in my opponent's board. When you factor in your opponent's board, then there's considerations like, do I take this tile that they need, and it's going to give me -2, but it's going to prevent them from finishing this row? Or do I let them complete that row so that I can get really good scoring with this adjacent play that they're going to take if I don't take it now? So there's all of these nuances to the game that we would love to be able to put a number on, but are extremely difficult to put a number on. Um, so this is the first example. The second example is a round two scenario. Again, it's my turn. It's the last play, and there's three whites in the middle. And this is, I think, pretty straightforward, right? You play the three whites on row 4. But what happens if I put another white tile here? So I personally would still play the whites on row 4. But what if I put another white tile here? Now you're incurring, additional negatives. And I don't know, maybe we say we had the first player tile and we had to take an extra yellow to play this row 1. So now I'm going -4 to play this on row 4. And, something I see a lot of newer players do or lower ELO players do is, like, even if you take these away, they would still play this on row 3. So this is a very, like, real situation that I see people run into. But, even in this scenario, like, maybe you do play them on row 3 at this point, and leave this row unfilled. And so, I'm not going to say anything is right or wrong here. The point of these is to illustrate just how hard it is, especially in, like, a real-time game, to be able to put point values on things, and to be confident in a play like this. I think, like, in the scenario, I don't know, maybe I'd play on row 3. I would probably definitely play on row 3 if this was a blue instead of a red. But, this take away even just one white and the whole thing changes. Like, I think now I'm playing on row 4. So all this to say, like, Azul, despite its simple gameplay and scoring, is really, really difficult to estimate the value of certain trade-offs. And I think this is another reason that it's worth experimenting and understanding. Like, maybe you're someone who has always played row 3 in this case, but then you start realizing, like, man, sometimes all it takes is one game. Like, if you play row 3 here and then only one white comes in the next round, and then your opponent gets the first player tile in the round after that, and they shut you out of whites in that round. Sometimes all it takes is one game for you to be like, man, I really should have unblocked this row 4. It would have been worth the negatives. And then you start doing it, and you start realizing, like, yeah, this is more comfortable for me. Like, it's easier for me to play like this. And then from there on out, maybe you do start making the play on row 4 instead of row 3. And it's really hard as a player to understand those trade-offs. It's really hard as someone making videos trying to teach Azul to communicate these trade-offs. There were probably several times in the beginner to master series where I said, you just have to trust me that, like, this is right, or that I think this is right. There's also plenty of times in the series where I said, don't consider everything I do to be correct, because I'm not confident that it is. And one thing you may have noticed in that series also is that I very rarely calculated points in any round other than round 5. So most of my gameplay revolves around how I feel about the situation, and not necessarily like I am taking this tile away from them because I know that if they don't complete this row this round, then next round I'll be able to dump at least 4 tiles of negatives on them, and that's worth -6. So it's not very calculation heavy, for me at least. I'm sure for other players it is, but I think it's very difficult to understand how certain trade-offs change those future looking calculations. So let's quickly just look at this sandbox. So you can just go to any game you're playing, and if you have the extension, you can come to the sandbox. It will default to the situation you're currently in, but if you hit edit and I think the X, it clears everything, and then once you do that, you can just drag stuff wherever you want, onto the board, onto here, onto having played on the board. So this is the sandbox feature. Should be really useful for exploring different ideas, especially useful for creating videos. So I'll be using it in future videos. But yeah, so short video and just encouraging you to explore different concepts, especially if you're stuck, and to not feel bad if you don't know what's right in a certain situation, because there could be many possible paths you can take. Nothing is inherently right or wrong, but explore, experiment with different ideas, and have fun with it. Don't worry if you lose yellow along the way, because ultimately it will all just benefit you, because you'll learn what feels good to you, and what's working. So in the long run, it'll be good. Okay, that's the video. Thanks, and see you next time.